Thank you very much for coming here tonight. My name is Brian Biggs. Who is this guy? This guy is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, local Chamber of Commerce. I'm on the board with Nikki and I'm on this the Small Business Committee, so I very much appreciate your coming here tonight. We've got a lot of questions. Your questions aren't going to be asked exactly like you turned them in, and they're not all going to be asked because of time. But we're going to squeeze them in, and we're going to get some of those things in, okay? The good thing about tonight is after it's all over, this is not a big group, and you may be able to talk to some of these candidates individually. That would be nice too. So anyway, again, thank you everyone for coming here and for the questions you've turned in. Now, for the rules of engagement, are you ready? And we expect everybody to act with proper decorum tonight. No outbursts, no that kind of thing, but I'll just read it to you. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the Front Row of Warren County Chamber of Commerce. These forums are organized and presented by the Front Row of Warren County Chamber of Commerce. These events are nonpartisan and meant to educate and inform the voting public on the candidates and their ability to perform the tasks of the office they wish to hold. Audience members are asked to hold applause while candidates are speaking. Outbursts and yelling from the audience will not be tolerated. We encourage everyone to show respect to the candidates and everyone in attendance. Those who cannot follow these guidelines will be asked to leave. The order of opening was determined by random selection. Each candidate will give a 1-minute opening introduction and a 2-minute closing remarks. The questions asked of the candidates have been submitted to the Chamber of Commerce by the public, some well in advance and some very recently, developed by representatives of the Chamber's Legislative Committee in the weeks leading up to the forum submitted. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance. That's important to understand. All questions will be read to the candidates by myself. Only questions that are issue-based will be used. No questions will be allowed directly from an audience member to the candidates. It has to come through myself. Personal attacks will not be tolerated. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. The green light, we have a stoplight in front. You can't see it, but it's here. We have a green light that indicates that the candidate has time to speak. The yellow light means that the candidate has 20 seconds remaining and should finish the sentence or the thought. The red light indicates that the candidate's time is over and the candidates need to honor that and stop. The moderator will interrupt the candidate if he continues beyond the red light time limit. No rebuttals are permitted. It's not a debate, it's a presentation. All candidates running for mayor of Front Royal and House of Delegates in the 18th and 29th districts were invited to attend this evening's events. However, the following candidates will give statements as their opponents are not present. So we'll invite candidates in this order. Eugene T. Walt, candidate for mayor of Front Royal, will present his statement. His opponent is not here. Laura Galante, I hope I'm saying that correctly, candidate for House of Delegates 18th District, will give us a statement as her opponent is not here. And Irina Kanin, did I say that right, Irina? Your accent is much more beautiful than mine. Also a candidate for the House of Delegates in the 29th District will give a statement as her opponent is not here. So let's go ahead and invite mayoral candidate T. Walt to come first.
Good evening, everyone. Glad everybody's here this evening to take part of this forum by the Warren County Front Royal Chamber of Commerce. And thanks for everything, and Brian, I appreciate you being here as well. Tonight, my name is Eugene R. T. Walt. I'm running for the mayor of Front Royal. I've been in Front Royal for many, many years, matter of fact, about 50 years. And I've been on the council since 2000 off and on. I've been the mayor in 2008, 2009. This year I decided to go ahead and run again for the mayorship for the 1 year that's under this special election. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been married for 55 years. Now you don't see that too often, but I've been married that long to my wife Juanita. We have a daughter and a son. My daughter's a pharmacist and my son works for the Prince William County School System. We have 3 grandsons. I have one at Ole Miss, been there for 6 years. He's gone through corporate CPA work, and now he's going into corporate law. So he's got 2 years with that, and then hopefully he'll get out of school and go to work. Another grandson was at UVA, graduated in biomedical engineering. He started this year at North Carolina University, Chapel Hill, on his doctorate program. So hopefully that he'll get through his doctorate program. That's another 5 or 6 years of work too. So they're going to be in school for a long time. And I hope I'm here to see them graduate. You know. But anyway, going back to that, I have a certificate in surveying. I worked for the Virginia Department of Transportation for 13 years. I was a party chief with them when we were building 81 and some of the other roads around this whole area, 64, 66, and other places. After I left there, I came to work for the town of Fort Royal as Public Works Director Engineer. Stayed here 25 years and retired in 1998. And in that, I enjoyed my work there. Got on council in 2000. Going back to my education, I have a degree in civil engineering. I have a certificate in highway construction engineering. And so I feel that I'm capable of doing some work here in Fort Royal to help benefit the community.
I think we're going to have to ask you to end.
Okay, well, I was going to say a few things more, but that's okay. And appreciate it.
And just a reminder, I apologize to you all, but that we're going to stay strictly to our schedule for everyone's benefit. 2 minutes. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting tonight. It's great to see so many faces. I'm Laura Galante. I'm running to represent the 18th District. My background is cybersecurity. I run a cybersecurity company in Marshall where I live with my son and husband of 11 years. I also run the 4-H club in Marshall, and my memories of Warren County are great because I came out here as a 4-H'er to the 4-H Center where I now serve on the board and used to win with my sheep in our county fair here. So it's great to be back. Look, I think it's incredibly important that we have a workforce here in Warren County and across the 18th District that prepares our kids so that they have really good jobs for the future. In a lot of cases, that means jobs in the trades and technical education, not just a path to college. I also think it's incredibly important that we have a strong community with good healthcare prices instead of what we have now, which is some of the highest premiums in the country. We need to make sure we can keep our teachers in Warren County instead of them going off to other counties where they're able to pay more in teacher salaries. We need to make sure that the lottery money in Virginia ends up going into our education budget instead of coming out of the general fund. These are basics. These are common sense solutions that will put Warren County on a strong path. But here's the question that I get at the door every day when I'm knocking here in Front Royal. Laura, what are you going to do about the EDA crisis? And here's my answer. You've probably gotten the statement that some of my volunteers were passing out today. I think it's important that Richmond have an oversight role to make sure that what has happened in Front Royal, the tragedy to people's tax dollars here, is not happening again. That means a basic oversight function of an annual report, public hearings, where people know when a bond or a property issue is going to come up and have an opportunity to come out and hear that. It's important that we have that check in Richmond so that when people see something wrong, they can say it and it's taken seriously. I will fight for that in Richmond. I'm looking forward to getting your vote in November. You got me with the red light. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kanin. And please say your name for everyone so they know how to pronounce.
You did so much better than me. Hello, my name is Irina Kanin. It's very close. Thank you so much for organizing this. I also want to thank the Chamber for doing this, for putting together this event. I am running for the 29th District, House of Delegates. And the area that my district covers is all of the city of Winchester, most of Frederick County, and a good portion of Warren, including a portion of Front Royal. I am a child advocacy attorney, or a guardian ad litem, or GAL, as they call us. I've been doing this work for over 10 years. I'm a UVA law graduate, UVA law school graduate, most of the time that I've been doing this work, I was doing it in Page County, literally next door to here. So I'm very familiar with the area. I am running because I think that we owe it to the citizens of to everybody in Virginia and to people who live in our district to have better access to health care. It took us affordable health care. It took us 4 years to expand Medicaid, which is an excusable length of time, given that the federal government was offering to pay for this expansion and there was no money coming out of the pockets of the residents of the 29th district. I want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I want to make sure that people get access. We have a very low minimum wage. The combination is terrible between the very low minimum wage and the lack of access to affordable health care. I'm also running because we need to pay our teachers better. The same thing that we had discussed, and that's very important for us to ensure that our teachers are not going to other areas and that we provide quality education here. So please vote for me on November 5th, and thank you very much again.
Mr. Obenchain and Mrs. Moore to take your places up here, please. While they're doing that, I just want to bring to your attention, and to our candidates' attention too, that we have 13 ballots that are possible for our local citizens to vote with because of the way our districts are divided up. So it could be that maybe some kind of line that gave us one delegate would be something to think about in the future. We have 15. All right. We'll begin with, I'm not sure how to address Mrs. Moore, candidate, and Senator Obenchain. Okay. We'll switch. Yeah. So we'll begin with Senator Obenchain, and then as we go through questions, I'll try to reverse who goes first each question. All right. 2 candidates running for Senate. The winner of the election will serve a 4-year term. The candidates are April D. Moore and Mark D. Obenchain. We'll begin with Senator Obenchain. You have 1 minute for your opening introduction.
Well, I'll try and talk fast. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm Mark Obenchain. I am your state senator. It's been a great privilege to represent the Shenandoah Valley and the Senate of Virginia for these years. I feel like we've been able to get a lot done. April, I'm glad you're here. I think that it's important for us to give voters a choice. And I have had the privilege of campaigning with April for, I guess, over the past 2 elections. You know, in representing the people of the 26th, I've worked hard to solve problems. And one of the dirty little secrets about this process is that we work pretty well across party lines on a lot of issues. And over my time in the Senate, I've worked to defeat the scourge of human trafficking. I've worked on eminent domain reform. I tried to advance free, open, and fair elections. Worked on interstate safety as well, getting improvements through the General Assembly for Interstate 81. And this year, importantly, introduced and gained passage of important local government accountability legislation that we hope we'll be able to build on in the future.
Thank you, Senator Obenchain. All right, Mrs. Moore, you have a minute.
Greetings. Why should you vote for me? If you want someone who believes that every American should have the same kind of health care security enjoyed by all the citizens of every other advanced democracy, then you should vote for me, and not my opponent, who has voted repeatedly to block 400,000 Virginians from getting access to affordable, quality health care. If you want workers in Virginia to get a fair shake, then you should vote for me, not for my opponent, who has voted repeatedly to keep the wages of a great many Virginians too low to lift them out of poverty. And if you want Virginia to join our neighboring states in taking responsible action to meet the challenge of climate change, you should vote for me, and not for my opponent, who has voted against every measure to protect the climate and the future for our children and grandchildren.
Thank you very much. This is going to echo our first question, but I believe it's important. And so you'll each have a minute to answer this question. It's going to sound very, very familiar. Senator Obenchain. First question, why should the voters of Warren County elect or re-elect you, and what makes you qualified?
that's awesome. I believe I really represent the values shared by people in the Shenandoah Valley. They believe in limited constitutional government, individual freedom, and personal responsibility. Those are the principles that have guided me in my time. April and I, we pose a fairly significant contrast. She's a national Democrat. I guess she supported Bernie Sanders last time around. She wants to repeal right to work. Wants a $15 an hour minimum wage. She wants, she got an F from the NRA. And yeah, you know, that there are a handful of people. There are a handful of people like April who want to undermine the rights of law-abiding citizens to exercise their Second Amendment rights. So I'm going to continue to represent those values that have made Virginia #1 in the nation for business, and we're going to stay #1 in the nation for business.
Thank you, Senator. And again, we're going to give you one more minute as to why should voters of Warren County elect you and what makes you qualified, Ms. Moore.
Well, first of all, I'm proud to get F from the NRA. I wasn't trying to get on their 100% list. I am working for the people. I'm 67 years old. I've never held public office. I'm running to represent the people. If Mark Obenshane were serving the people instead of the big moneyed interests like Dominion Energy, Coke Industries, and other big fat cats, then I wouldn't be running. I don't know the term national Democrat, but if I'm elected, you can count on me to work for the citizens of Virginia. I want to raise the minimum wage. I don't think $7.25 is enough, and $7.25 an hour is actually a lower wage than the minimum wage of 50 years ago in actual dollars. You can count on me to work for the people and not the big money.
Thank you very much. Moving on to question number 2, and we'll start with you, Ms. Moore. What are the 2 biggest issues facing the district you wish to represent, and how do you plan to address those 2 issues?
Well, I think the #1 issue for all of us, whether we live in this district or elsewhere in Virginia or America or the world, is climate change. This is a crisis, and Virginia has done next to nothing about it. Every time the issue of joining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative has come up in the legislature, Mr. Obenshane and his fellow Republicans have opposed it. We need action now. And I also believe that healthcare is huge. The opioid crisis has done terrible damage in our district and around the state. And I have already launched a group of people who are passionate about the issue of the opioid crisis to work with me, if I win, to help give me a good piece of legislation, and also to spread the word that we need compassion and treatment, not shame and incarceration.
Thank you very much. Senator Obenshane, what are the 2 biggest issues facing the district you wish to represent, and how do you plan to address those issues?
Well, I'm going to be more specific with respect to Warren County. First of all, jobs and the economy. I think that it is critical for us to have an economic policy in Virginia that supports our ability for our children to graduate from Warren County schools, Page County schools, and other schools in the Valley, and actually find good jobs here in the communities that they were raised in, so that they don't have to go to places like Northern Virginia or out of state in order to raise their families. Second, I think that we need to continue to focus on government accountability, particularly at the local level. Last year, I introduced legislation that required local government elected officials to receive Conflict of Interest training and Freedom of Information Act training to increase accountability and transparency. That was not in place before July of this year, and it needs to be expanded.
Thank you, Senator Obenshane. You're first on this one. Next year, the Equal Rights Amendment comes up for ratification. How would you vote and why?
Well, first of all, let me go back and also point out that the kind of California-style environmental and energy policy that April is talking about is going to bring us the kind of blackouts that are rolling through California right now. If you want California-style energy policy, you're going to have to live with consequences. On ERA, I believe in equal rights. We have an equal rights amendment in the Virginia Constitution. Our laws are strong in terms of our ability to protect the rights of women and, frankly, everybody in Virginia to enjoy equal rights in every aspect of their life. I do not support discrimination on the basis of any improper characteristic, and sex is clearly an improper basis for discrimination, and I support our laws dealing with equal rights for women, and I think that those are important protections that should be preserved.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Moore, next year the Equal Rights Amendment comes up for ratification. How would you vote and why?
I will vote to ratify the ERA. It's about time. I mean, Virginia should become the 38th state to ratify it, and that will make a big difference nationally. And it is not, I hate to correct you, Mr. Overchain, it is not part of Virginia's Constitution. And since I have a little bit of time left over, I'll go to renewable energy. Virginia lags behind our neighboring states when it comes to solar and wind. We can do a lot better, and we need to do a lot better. I don't know about California, but North Carolina is way ahead of us when it comes to solar. Virginia ranks 34th among the 50 states in terms of solar jobs per capita. These are good jobs that we should be bringing to Virginia. We should not let them go to other states and leave us out.
Thank you very much. Next question for Mrs. Moore. We'll start with you. According to a report by the Virginia Tourism Corporation, the tourism industry generates $26 billion in visitor spending in Virginia in 2018. How important do you believe tourism is to the district you will represent if elected?
Tourism is extremely important. Here in Warren County, I mean, we have thousands and thousands of people coming here every year to enjoy the river and the amenities. Shenandoah County, where I live, but the district, we all know that we are very fortunate to live in this very, very beautiful district. Tourism is huge, and I would do what I could to promote it. There's agritourism, which I think is a good thing, which could help our rural communities, our farmers. It seems like the chambers of commerce are doing a good job of trying to make their communities accessible, affordable, and of interest to visitors. So yes, tourism's great.
Thank you very much, Seth.
Well, it's easy to say that, but you got to put your money where your mouth is. And quite frankly, in order to support our tourism industry, you actually have to listen to them. And there's nobody who is a stronger opponent of doubling our minimum wage in Virginia than the tourism industry. And it's not because they don't want people to earn higher wages. I certainly do. But a lot of these people who work in tourism are high school kids. Kids who are graduating from high school, seasonal workers who work in jobs in Virginia Beach, in the national parks, in our state parks, and elsewhere. And I can tell you, my children started work when they were 15 years of age. One scooping ice cream and one making sandwiches in a bagel shop. That was an important experience for these teenagers. And if we eliminate those minimum wage jobs or jobs less than $15 an hour, we're going to eliminate important opportunities for the people that we're supposed to be helping enter the workforce.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question, we'll start with Senator Owen-Chain. It's been a tough year for Warren County. What will you do on the state level to help this community recover from the Economic Development Authority scandal and move forward?
Well, I've mentioned this a couple of times. I have worked for a number of years on local government accountability issues. Freedom of Information Act and Conflicts of Interest Act are in place for a reason. I have to take Conflict of Interest Act training every year and Freedom of Information Act training every year. Local elected officials do not. And it creates serious questions about how they do their job and the degree of accountability that exists in those positions. This year, I secured passage of legislation requiring that training, and I believe that we need to look back at that and expand it, not just to local elected officials, but to local government appointed officials as well. We also need to look at the auditing function and look at what oversight is being provided for the audit of authorities like the EDA and whether there is an expanded role for the Auditor of Public Accounts or other oversight authorities.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Moore, it's been a tough year. What would you do at the state level to help this community recover from the Economic Development Authority scandal?
Yeah, it's just terrible what Warren County has suffered because of neglect and carelessness and greed, millions of dollars taken from taxpayers. Richmond definitely has a role to play here. I believe that Richmond should, the legislature should pass legislation that would require an annual audit of the EDAs around the state. I think there should be a public hearing anytime there's a procurement, a very large procurement, and maybe even term limits for some of the members. I gather there was somebody who's been part of it for 30 years. Maybe this is a good place for term limits. But I gather that while the situation has been really bad in Warren County, this is not the only EDA around the state that has suffered. So I think action from Richmond is really required.
Well, thank you very much. Continuing with you, Ms. Moore, Virginia has made its way back to the top of being named by CNBC as the top state for business in 2019. What are your plans for ensuring that Virginia continues to be at the top of this list?
Well, I've heard that many times, that Virginia is #1 for business, but unfortunately that comes at a price. Virginia also ranks 50th for workers. So I would like to see, yes, Virginia being good for business, but also a good place for our people to work and be able to support their families. $7.25 an hour is not nearly enough. When I was canvassing last weekend, I talked with a woman who makes $7.50 an hour. She has 2 young children. She can't afford to buy her kids what they need, the very basics. So I think raising the minimum wage is extremely important. I would do it in steps. I wouldn't jump immediately to $15, but that would be the goal.
Okay, Senator Obenshain?
Well, you know, where I come from, if you're #1, it means you're doing something right. And I don't think that we need to turn Virginia on its head in order to maintain our #1 status as a great place to do business. If we're #1 in the country as the best place to do business, it means that we're creating new jobs and new opportunities. We just brought Amazon into Virginia. That's going to create at least 25,000 jobs, and the spin-off jobs that are going to come from that are going to be absolutely tremendous. You know, April and her colleagues, they want to repeal our right-to-work laws, which has been one of the most fundamental components of our economic development toolbox. They want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. They want higher taxes. All of those things make Virginia a less desirable place for business to come and locate and grow and create opportunities.
We're going to continue with you, Senator Obenshain. Can you provide a brief summary of your position on unions and their role to Virginia's workers?
And, you know, I think that unions play an important role, and they certainly have in our history. I also believe that workers ought to be free to make their own decision as to whether they want to join a union or not. I do not believe that we ought to allow unions to determine who gets hired in a business. States without a right-to-work law have closed shops in which membership in a union is a prerequisite for employment in many jobs. Fortunately, Virginia has right-to-work laws that give people the opportunity to choose for themselves whether they want to join a union and pay those dues or not. That right-to-work law has helped us grow our economy in Virginia and has raised the level of prosperity for Virginians across the Commonwealth.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Moore, the same question?
I can't think of any issue on which Mark and I disagree more. The right to work is a con job. It's that simple. When unions were stronger, workers did better. During the years when our economy was booming, unions were strong and workers had good bargaining power. When Mark says, oh, well, you know, we don't want to force workers to join a union. Well, do you think one worker can bargain with a giant corporation? No. The workers need a union so the playing field can be leveled and they can have bargaining power. If unions become stronger, workers become stronger. I've been endorsed by 4 different unions, and I'm very proud of those endorsements. And by the way, the argument that it's teenagers working for the minimum wage, some are, but many adults who are working for the minimum wage and trying to support their families, maybe even 2 or 3 jobs trying to make ends meet. You can't do it on $7.25 an hour.
Continuing.
So we're going to eliminate all those
No,
opportunities.
it's not a debate.
Yes.
It's not a debate, not a debate, please. All right, so final question. This is important to our area, and I know it's been touched on, but we're going to cover it one more time. So we're going to start with Mrs. Moore. How do you propose to address opioid addiction in our area?
I've already started working on this because it's so important to me. I've reached out to people for whom this is their passion, people who are parents of addicted young people, and also to people for whom this is their profession. They're working in this field. And I've invited these people to work with me, partly because if I'm elected, I would like to have a piece of legislation immediately to address this that I can take to Richmond. And my other purpose in this is that we need to move public understanding of this terrible issue away from shame and incarceration toward compassion and treatment. And so this group has started and it's launched and it's going to keep going. It's called Drug Addiction Resource Network, and they're working. So I would be working with them, and this is just an issue we've got to deal with, and I would treat it as #1 when I go to Richmond.
Thank you. Senator Obenshain, your same question.
You know, I don't know many families who aren't touched by drug abuse and addiction. I have a nephew who is afflicted and has been fighting addiction for a number of years. I've been touched by stories of families who've lost children to drug overdoses, who've died. You know, I don't think that the answer is just eliminating laws. I don't believe that we should decriminalize drugs. I believe that we need to focus on going after the dealers. If somebody sells heroin that kills one of my children, I want them going to prison for a long, long time. People who are struggling with addiction, you know, if you give them a choice, they're not going to say, I want to go into a treatment program. 9 times out of 10, they will not. We have to have an incentive to encourage them to accept treatment, and that is something that I believe is something that differentiates certainly April and me.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're done with the questions. At this point, you each have a chance to give your summary remarks for 2 minutes each. Senator Obenshain began, so we'll go first with Mrs. Moore and then Senator Obenshain.
I respect that this district is mostly conservative. I grew up in a Republican family, and I've lived my own life around many of what my parents considered good conservative values. In normal times, I wouldn't be running. In normal times, I would accept that the conservative people of this district should be represented by a good conservative. But these aren't normal times, where we can count on self-described conservative politicians to have the integrity to serve the real interests of the people they claim to represent. Now, as a private person, Mr. Obenshain seems like a fine man. I like him. I would be happy to have such a man as my neighbor. But he has chosen to be a party man at a time when his party has abandoned the conservative principles that once guided it. Mr. Obenshain has repeatedly chosen to serve the powerful, moneyed interest at the people's expense. I will always side with fairness for the people, never make myself the servant of big money, the way my opponent has for years in doing the bidding of the likes of mighty Dominion Energy at the expense of average Virginians. I would never put party ahead of what's right, the way my opponent did in blocking giving 400,000 Virginians the health care coverage they need, depriving them of the sense of security enjoyed by all of the citizens of every other advanced country. You can depend on me to do everything I can to assure that our children have a Virginia and America and a planet where they can thrive and prosper. One of this area's prominent and principled conservatives, Joshua Huffman, has written this to explain why he is helping my campaign. Quote, although as a limited government conservative, I disagree with April Moore on certain policy issues, I am supporting her because I think it is important to have someone loyal to principles of honesty and integrity, not someone who isn't who he claims to be.
Thank you very much. Senator Robinson.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to come here today. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, and thank you to the folks in the audience for coming and listening to us today. You know, I don't believe that we need more partisan, divisive rhetoric in Richmond. I believe that we need to work together in order to solve problems of real people. And that's what I've done during my years in the General Assembly, is I've worked with the members of the General Assembly. I mentioned earlier that one of the dirty little secrets about the way that things work in Richmond is that 95% of the issues we work on are just problems. And we work among Democrats and Republicans across partisan lines to solve those problems, to work together, to find solutions that work for Virginians. And I've done that during my tenure in the General Assembly. There are going to be 5% of the issues that we deal with that are cats and dogs issues. They're the reasons that we have liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans. They're the reasons we have two parties. But I'm going to continue to work for the people of my district, of the Shenandoah Valley, of the 26th Senate District. I'm going to continue to fight the problem of opioid addiction. I'm going to continue to stand up for those who can't defend themselves, who are victims of human trafficking. I'm going to continue to stand up for the property rights of Virginians when they are under attack, not just by government, but by utilities as well. I'm going to stand up for free enterprise in Virginia. You know, we talk about energy policy. You know, in my private practice, I represented a wind energy producer. And you know who were the #1 opponents of that? They were the environmentalists who wanted to stop it. We used to call these NIMBYs, not in my backyard. They're now bananas. But build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. I'm going to continue to work for internet safety. I'm going to continue to fight against elder abuse. I'm going to continue to work for local government accountability to help places like Warren County in the future. Thank you very much. April, it's good to be with you. And, they can schedule it.
Well, they can. If you're the one who haven't heard from.
Something like that. I'm working on
So we're going to welcome to our stage right now soon
Next week.
Oh, we got the name tags ready. Just a reminder to our enthusiastic audience that we're not going to applaud during statements, no matter how much we want to. We'll hold off till the end. Okay, test those mics real quick.
Test.
All right, so our last forum of the evening is the House of Delegates for the 15th District. If you're not sure what district you're in or how you're going to vote, you can come up here and we can show you a ballot. But that's the last thing. There are two candidates running for this seat. The winner of the election will serve a 4-year term. The candidates are Mr. Todd Gilbert and Ms. Beverly Harrison. Thank you very much for being here. There we go. We'll begin with Ms. Harrison. You will have 1 minute for your opening introduction, and you'll be followed by Mr. Gilbert. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out on work night. I am running as a person, Beverly Harrison, not as the Democratic Party. I don't agree with the Democratic Party all of the time, and they are not the ones I'm hoping to represent. It's you, the people in this community, and your best interests. They will vary by person, from education and financial aid to local business opportunities. That is why we need a delegate who isn't afraid to stand up to political pressure, who will turn down special interest campaign donations, and who, yes, will vote against their party sometimes if that's what's in the best interests of the constituents, and I am that person.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gilbert?
Thank you. Well, I'm Todd Gilbert, and it has been the challenge and honor of my lifetime to represent the good people of the 15th House District. It is a labor of love that I never take lightly. When I represent the people that I represent in Richmond, when I cast votes on their behalf, I know that is a tremendous responsibility. And again, it is one I take very seriously, and I would look forward to the opportunity to continue to serve. Thank you.
We'll now read questions to the candidates. You'll have 1 minute for each answer. We'll start with Delegate Gilbert. Is that the correct way to address you? I'm sorry for not doing that earlier.
Todd is fine if you
Why should the voters of Warren County re-elect you, and what makes you qualified?
Well, I have a long record, some of which people agree with very much, and some of which some people disagree with very much. But my record is clear, and I've never been anything but clear in my representation of my district and the people who live in it. When I first set out to run for office, I made promises. I promised that I would be an accurate reflection of the vast majority of the people I represent, that I would represent their values, that I would never raise their taxes, that I would protect their individual liberties, and I have kept my promises. And I think that is certainly my #1 refrain when asking people for their vote once again.
Thank you. Ms. Harrison?
I am running as an advocate. That's where my experience is. I've been an advocate for education, an advocate for the equal rights, and now I'm ready to be an advocate for you. When I went down earlier this year and saw what was happening in Richmond and how much power special interest money and policy or groups had over what was happening, I was appalled, and that really is one of the reasons why I'm running. It's important that you have someone who can represent you, who's been in your shoes, who understands the difficulties in life, and instead of judging you, will support you. And to have someone who's a fighter, who will work for you on your side, and who, again, I'll say it because it's important and it's true, who will turn down special interest money and work for you instead.
Thank you very much. We're going to continue with you, Ms. Harrison. Comparatively speaking, Warren County represents a smaller geographical area of the state. You'll share this with 2 other delegates. You share an area with 2 other delegates. What steps will you take to work together to ensure the overall success of our particular county?
I love that idea. The ERA gave me a wonderful opening on how to work together with people, even if you don't agree with them. And in working with the 2 other delegates, I have experience already working with them. I've been working with other delegates up and down 81. I think we would be active participants who are willing to work together. We were sitting together in the back chatting. When you see the power of cooperation, it's what you want. It's what drives you, because you can get so much more done. And in fact, I was kind of hoping you were going to ask about what's my plan for Warren County, because I love what Laura Galante wrote, and that's what I'm going to read. Because when somebody does something great, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just back them up.
Thank you very much. Delegate Gilbert.
So I want to make sure I understand the question. Could you read
All right,
that
I'm going to reread it. Comparatively speaking, Warren County represents a smaller geographical area of the state. You're sharing this with 2 other delegates. What steps will you take to work together to ensure the overall success of our particular county?
Sure. Well, I obviously have a great relationship with the other 2 delegates that represent Warren County. Just this week, we've been in discussions about things we can do to address the crisis that this county and this community is currently experiencing. things we can do for reform, for oversight, for transparency, for accountability. I don't know if it's out yet. No, I think one of the other delegates was going to release a loose set of plans that we have. The bottom line is this: I get along with them very well. We are actively working on issues that are directly affecting this community, even this week. Same relationship with our state senator and our congressman. And we use those relationships to try to accomplish good things for the people we represent together.
Thank you very much. Continuing on with you, Delegate Gilbert. According to a report by the Virginia Tourism Corporation, the tourism industry generated $26 billion in visitor spending in Virginia in 2018. How important do you believe tourism is to the district you will represent if re-elected?
Well, it's extremely important. You know, we are here at the gateway to the national park. All of the economic activity that goes along with the beauty of our community, of this district, generates economic activity, generates real income for people, makes jobs happen, creates jobs. The last thing we need to do is stifle the discretionary income that people have that they now use to go on vacation, to spend the weekend in this part of the world, to raise their taxes, to raise wages to artificial levels of businesses that rely on seasonal labor or youth labor to run their businesses effectively. And so the last thing we need to do is tax people more, regulate them more, and increase the cost of doing business. And I'm committed to helping keep those economic realities the same in Virginia.
Ms. Harrison, the same question. According to the Virginia Tourism Corporation, tourism represents $26 billion in visitor spending in Virginia in 2018. How important do you believe tourism is to the district you will represent if elected?
I think it's vital. It's part of who we are. It's our backyards, our rivers. It's where we all naturally go. And when people think of the Shenandoah Valley, they think of coming up on Skyline Drive and going out and going to the caves or the caverns and coming out here to Front Royal. Tourism is a form of economic gardening, is the phrase that I've heard, where when you want to grow and expand business, you look at what you're already doing and see how you can do it better. I've spoken with people over in Page County, and they're succeeding quite well over there, as we are on this side of the mountains. I would add that something critical to expanding tourism is broadband internet. We have limited broadband internet, and my opponent voted to cut $30 million in support to that.
We're going to continue with you, Ms. Harrison. Question number 4 is, it's been a tough year for Warren County. What will you do on the state level to help this community recover from the Economic Development Authority scandal and move forward?
I will work with Laura Galante and Marina. And Marina, I apologize, I still can't pronounce your last name. This is, again, one of these opportunities when you know who you're working with, and when you've talked with them and you've gotten to know them as a person, you know where their strengths are. April is in the environment, and obviously Laura really has a handle on what would make a difference here. So I will go over the 3 highlights: the EDA Oversight Committee in Richmond, an annual report submitted to the governor and a committee that's in charge of EDAs, and transparent and public meetings, mandating public hearings for bond issuance or property acquisition. Again, when we work together, we don't have to know everything, and it's hard to be an expert in a million different things. When you're working cooperatively in situations like this, we can play to Laura's strengths, and that's what I would do.
Thank you very much. Delegate Gilbert.
One more time, please. I apologize.
It's been a tough year for Warren County. What will you do on the state level to help this community recover from the Economic Development Authority scandal and move forward?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned a moment ago, I'm already working with our delegation to try to bring some real change that this episode, this crisis, has warranted. A few years ago, I was the author of Virginia's fairly robust ethics reform laws. In the wake of the Governor McDonald scandal, I was asked to carry the ethics reforms that we now have in place here in Virginia. I serve on the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Advisory Council as a result of that legislation. I have been in touch with our attorneys there. I've asked them to look point by point at the issues that have been raised here that are currently affecting this community, that have been brought to light, and we hope to bring forth once we know everything about what has happened. And I'm not one to rush to propose quick fixes to things that aren't readily understandable yet. But once we know everything about what has transpired, I think we'll be in a much better position to address it in the Ethics Council and in the legislature.
Thank you very much. We're going to continue with you, Delegate Gilbert. What are the two biggest issues?
Freudian slip. Anybody catch it?
Gilbert?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. We're going to continue with you. What are the two biggest issues facing the district you wish to represent, and how do you plan to address those issues?
Well, Virginia's agriculture and forestry sector is far and away the #1 industry that we have here in Virginia. And I represent 3 of the counties in the top 5 in agriculture. So certainly maintaining our viability in agriculture not only does 2 things. It maintains the economic viability of the vast resources that we have in our communities, but it also maintains our rural character. And I think we need to balance those things. I came to the Valley as an infant because of our agriculture industry, and the benefits that I've enjoyed in my life, my ability to go to college, my ability to go to law school, etc., have been born of the agriculture industry and its success. And so it's never lost on me how important that is to our community.
Thank you very much. Ms. Harrison.
My priorities are, in a nutshell, mental health and education, although I think it's unrealistic to say you only have 2 priorities. It's like saying I only love 2 of my children. If you had 10 or 20. Healthcare is huge. We finally have had Medicaid expansion that did positively affect 400,000 Virginians. Delegate Gilbert voted against that. And part of what we don't talk about are the issues that often create addiction situations. That's mental health. And those are things that can be child abuse. And in fact, I was looking up some figures today. As far as registered sex offenders in our district, we have at least 275. I would like to see more attention paid to the causes behind the mental health issues that we have and look at fully funding education. I would simply add that the delegate recently voted to cut $5.5 million to community need-based financial aid to our community colleges.
Thank you, Candidate Harrison. Another question for you. Drug abuse and mental health issues are at the forefront on a national level. What steps will you take to provide assistance and assurances that our county will not get lost in the shuffle?
I think that's why you look at all the different levels of people who are affected. It's not the person just suffering from addiction. It's the children. It's the grandparents who are now potentially caring for the children. It's what's happening in the school when you have a child who is not sure whether or not mom or dad might overdose while they're at school. It is such a complicated issue. It's not a quick and easy answer, but it's going to need expertise and it will need some funding. That is not to say I'm up here saying, let's raise lots of taxes and spend everybody's money, but let's take a thoughtful, measured approach and look at the the incredibly complex level of this problem, and then address it piece by piece so that whether or not you're a Republican or a Democrat, we can agree to move forward and help improve the quality of people's lives and save some lives.
Thank you. Delegate Gilbert, again, the mental health, I'm going to read it again. Drug abuse and mental health issues are at the forefront on a national level. What steps will you take to provide assistance and assurances that our county will not get lost in the shuffle?
Well, I've experienced both of those issues in the criminal justice system where I've worked for my entire professional career on both sides of the issue. I worked in Warren County for 2 or 3 years as a prosecutor. One of the reasons I have a special connection to this community was my work here with our police, with our various assets that deal with these and grapple with these issues on a daily basis. I think ultimately the question is making sure we don't get lost in the shuffle. That's our job. I mean, the job of a representative is to make sure that resources that are available that do not get diverted to other places, and that we have our fair share of resources here in our district.
Thank you very much. This is our final question, and we'll continue with you, Delegate Gilbert. Please address your views on gun violence and gun ownership.
Sure. Well, they've been fairly clear. I don't think anyone in this room has any misconception about what my views are. I will say this, whenever I see the capacity for evil in the human heart, it only strengthens my resolve that I be able to protect my family from it in a manner that I see fit. And there are lots of ways to hurt people. There are lots of ways to kill people. A person bent on mass murder got in a box truck in Nice, France a few years ago and killed 82 people with it. I didn't hear for any calls for banning of this dangerous instrument or implement, the box truck. So I will continue to be a strong advocate for the right of people to defend their families, to bear arms as they see fit, and we will continue to press to try to find ways to intervene with those people who don't belong with having a firearm, and who have committed crimes and have lost their right to do so.
Thank you. Ms. Harrison.
I support the Second Amendment, and that's not something you're going to hear on social media. People are going to say, I'm coming for their guns. I'm not. I think it's an important amendment, and I respect people's right to protect their families. I am dismayed at what happened on July 9th, and I would like to call your attention to it. That was when the governor called a special session on mass gun violence, and after only 90 minutes, my opponent led the shutdown of that session. There were Republicans and Democrats who were ready to work, and he prevented them from moving forward, saying that it needed to go into committee and for them to work on it, from which he had a bill that came out. And if it was such a great bill, why didn't he do it earlier? I would add lastly that 56 days after that special session was shut down, his PAC received a $200,000 donation from the National Rifle Association.
Okay, we've both done that. All right, so we have 2 minutes for closing remarks. Since Ms. Harrison was the first to go, we'll start with Delegate Gilbert, and he'll be followed by Ms. Harrison. 2 minutes again.
Well, thank you again. I get shown a fair amount of disdain from those who object to my political positions on a regular basis, and I'm okay with that. That's part of the deal. That's part of this job, is that you will be criticized. And I'm okay with the criticism. But the disdain, I think, even though I am the focus of it, and I think the last question was, and the reaction to it was a perfect example. The disdain of those who disagree with me politically is not for me. It is for approximately the 70% of people who live in this district who agree with me. That's who people who criticize me and who moan and hum and ha at me. That's who they have a problem with, is their neighbors that they disagree with. And again, I believe that I am an accurate reflection of the political beliefs and views of the vast majority of the people of the 15th District, and I think I do a great job reflecting those values on a daily basis. And I'm not, I think I would be remiss if I didn't talk about, beyond our district, how well Republicans have governed the state. This year, we are once again the #1 state to do business, according to CNBC. There's a reason for that, and the policies that we protect jealously are a large reason for that. 2 years ago, we reduced regulations by 25%. We maintain our right to work law to make sure that business can continue to thrive and be competitive with other states. Just this year, we not only gave $85 million additional dollars to public education, we sent $564 million to our rainy day fund in the event that we have a budget shortfall, and we did all of that without raising taxes. We did all of that while maintaining our AAA bond rating, and we did all of that while at the same time returning approximately $1 billion to the taxpayers of Virginia in the form of rebates and other tax relief. So I'm very proud of the job we've done. I'm proud of the job I've done representing my constituents. We do a great job with constituent service, and I'm proud to serve the people that I serve.
Thank you very much. Ms. Harrison, 2 minutes.
My job is to listen and help, not to judge, and I will work to help you to the best of my ability. We may not always get the solutions and the answers that we would like, but your issues will always be a top priority. When I was working on the ERA, the whole reason I began my run for office relates to what happened with Delegate Gilbert. This year, he prevented the delegates from being able to vote on ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. He also falsely tied the amendment to the issue of abortion, which is clearly tied to the right for privacy. It's important that people and legislators can vote. When you obstruct a vote, you obstruct the process, and I take great umbrage to that, and that did drive me into running for office. And I feel compelled in my own closing remarks just to address the issue of education. My opponent is not a proven education advocate. He says he supports it, but he's received a 0 rating twice from the Virginia Education Association. And in 2018, he was the only person in the House and the Senate to receive that rating. If he were truly someone who was supporting our children in their pathways for college and for workforce creation and the jobs that will allow our children to stay here instead of leave us, then I do not believe he would have received those ratings. Or back to the funding cuts that we have seen. I am a proven education advocate. It's what I've been doing for years. And I believe in our children. They are our future. Whatever else happens with our business and our economy, if our children are not okay, our future will not be okay. And I'll just wrap it up at that and say thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you very much. And with a few words here, thank you very much for the candidates that took their time to be here with us. It's not always a comfortable place to be in front of an audience, and so we very much appreciate your coming and joining us tonight. And we wish each of you luck in your candidacy. Thank you very much for those people here in attendance. It's people that are involved in our community that we very much appreciate your activity. We appreciate Dwayne Coates for the recording and the audio things that Dwayne did. We appreciate all the volunteers you've seen around and the members of the Chamber of Commerce that have helped. Warren County Registrar's Office, including Carol Tobin. We appreciate the members of the press that are here covering the event, and encourage you to review some of the things that happened here tonight. Again, thank you for coming. Remember to vote on Tuesday, November 5th. This concludes our event.